Instead of trying to change the white man and your mind, make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa 9, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, it's so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionless movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be capitalist. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialists.
Peace and Black Power families, Brother Ajay Taimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach Black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up in the immortal words of our beloved Baba ancestor Jegna, Brother Malcolm X, giving us his 3-part outline for what Black people should do, in lieu of the fact that we're being oppressed. Family, we welcome you to Harlem Liberation School online on our YouTube channel. A lot of things are percolating, family. We got a lot popping off, and today, this is part of our Hip Hop 50 series. Some of you who know me well know that I was a MC in Harlem, and I have that background, spoken word poetry and stuff like that. And that background deeply impacts and influences my politics and the way I deliver and my sensibility and the way I look at the world. So I thought it was important, given that this is supposedly the 50th anniversary. I would probably argue, no disrespect to Kool Herc and some of the legends, that it's a little older than 50. I think it's a little older than 50, but that's another story for another time. In lieu of the fact that they're celebrating it as the 50th anniversary, Harlem Liberation School wanted to make sure we had a series that documented the voices of our people talking about, at the grassroots level, talking about what hip hop means to them. Because now that hip hop has become a billion-dollar industry, sometimes people don't care about what us ordinary, everyday brothers and sisters think. They just want to hear it from the rich folk in the industry. So this is very important to us. And today we have a brother that's very important to us as well. Brother Ramessu, who's been on before. He has a book that is really excellent reading. It's really foundational reading. Should probably be on what we would call a recommended reading list, particularly for organizations that have political education programs. We're going to bring our brother on now, see what he has to say about hip hop. Peace, Brother Ramessu. How you be?
I'm good, brother. How are you? Peace.
Excellent. Excellent, man. I am breathing. I am good. I'm glad to have you on again, brother. Let's begin very quickly before we get into the hip hop. If you could tell us about your book. I think it was called Fundamental African-Centered Thought. Am I correct?
That's correct. It's called FACT, Fundamental African-Centered Thought. The subtitle is Lessons and Solutions for African People. And that's exactly what it is. It's a series of lessons about things that we need to know and things that we need to do in order to transform the condition of the group. Because the help we need is is basically us. The helping hand we're looking for is at the end of our own arm, and if it's to be, it's up to us. They say if it is to be, it's up to me. We have to have that mentality. And Malcolm X always talked about this race first ideology or mentality that he learned as a son of a Garveyite, who also promoted this idea of race first. And so him and other people pointed out the fact that every other community of people that are thriving and that are successful and having some measurable degree of success are doing so because they're putting their group first. And so these are some of the ideas that are talked about and fleshed out in the book. My favorite section is the section where I talk about the importance of self-sufficiency and having self-sufficient control of all of our basic human survival needs, our food, clothes, shelter, education, medication, and self-defense. And I'm proposing that as one of the main solutions to remedy many of the problems that we face as a people. So that's the book, Fundamental African-Centered Thought. And the good thing about the book, at the end of each lesson, there's like a review of that section. So if you want to kind of go back and just refresh yourself, you don't necessarily have to read that whole section over again. You can just go to the bullet points at the end of the lesson and, just kind of refresh yourself and then go on with the book, or maybe come back to it as a reference. And so since we're talking about hip hop, I wanted to put this out to you because this is from the book, because I'm reading from the book and it's not too lengthy. This is talking about the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey. And I kind of fused it with hip hop. If you know, then you'll get it. I want to see if you can realize what I'm doing here. This is talking about Marcus Garvey. It says, to generate power, one must first raise money and organize people. Garvey was an expert at both. Garvey's ability to speak publicly and convey his philosophy was exceptional. He is said to have had the ability to emotionally move the crowd he was addressing. He was able to reach a wide audience because of his mass appeal. For Garvey, Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism was an ongoing daily operation. He was reportedly very serious about his work and is said to have always been strictly business. So if you're a hip hop head, you kind of see what I did there with some of how I talked about Garvey's, the way he was so earnest in what he was trying to do. I fused some titles in there, so I don't know if you peeped that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Strictly business. Yeah, you put some titles of some classics up in there.
Hard to
Doubt.
earn, move the crowd, right? You have to
Yes,
be
sir.
ahead to really get that. So
Yes, sir.
I'm saying that now to begin to set the stage for this conversation about hip hop on the 50th anniversary.
Excellent. Excellent, Brother Ramessu. We thank you for that. Man, for people who don't know you, can you just give them a basic breakdown of, your name, city, state, what you do, who you are?
Okay, so I'm Rollo. I'm also known as Ramessu. For a long time, I've done radio. I started doing radio in 1992. A friend of mine, after we graduated from high school, he went on to college and he got involved with communications at the college, and they allowed him to do a radio program. And around 92, he brought me in as like a co-host. So I was an addition to a show that was already on the air. So he brought me in as a talent coordinator, co-host. I was hosting a segment called the Hip Hop Study Hall, which was an opportunity that I had to interview a lot of the veteran rap artists. So I got a chance to do that. I did a lot of on-location stuff. And so I was, that kept me very busy. I met just about everybody. I got video, I got pictures, I got everything. I'm in Long Island, so I live in Suffolk County, although I was born in the Bronx where hip hop began. I was moved out to Suffolk County very early on because the Bronx back in the 1970s was a crazy place. If you're from New York, you know that. And so that's basically the gist of my story right there. My most recent endeavor was the book that I wrote. And I also started a website years ago called offthecorner.net. Offthecorner.net. We're going to relaunch that soon. So those are some of the things that I've been involved with. And that's some of my past in terms of what I've done and where I am,
Appreciate that, good brother. I guess if you could go back now, depending on how old we are, that's a little more difficult for some than others. But can you remember the first hip hop song you heard, or at least some of the early hip hop songs, and what you were doing when you heard them, and what impression it made on you?
Yeah, I could tell you the very first time I heard rap music. Of course, like I said, I'm from the Bronx, but I was born in the Bronx, and I'm a little kid when hip hop is really in its infancy. So I'm not at parties. So this is going on right under my nose, like right around the corner from where I live. But I didn't know that because I wasn't hanging out like that. So I was moved to Suffolk County early on. It was about fall of 1979. And I believe it was a Saturday because I know my mother was home from work and she was cleaning the house. Now, in my house, we had a radio that was, in the kitchen. This is before people had televisions in their kitchen. I don't even know if people still have televisions in the kitchen, but there was always a radio that remained in the kitchen. The premier station for black music at that time was WBLS. So the radio was always on WBLS. So my mother cleaned one bathroom and she had come upstairs to clean the other bathroom. And my bedroom is at the end of a hallway and the kitchen is on the other end of that same hallway. So you got the kitchen on one end and my bedroom is on the other end. So the radio's playing and I'm at the end of the hallway in my room. My door is open and BLS is on the radio. And I heard hip hop, the hip to the hip hop. You don't stop to rock. I froze. So immediately, like when a dog is kind of busy doing something, sniffing around, and hears something in the distance, his ears go up. That was me. I froze. And I'm standing there listening, and it just kept going. And so now I'm starting to walk down the hallway so I can get closer to the radio. And as I'm walking, I'm leading with my ear. I'm not even leading with my nose. I'm leading with my ear because I'm listening. I'm so intent, like I'm so fascinated by it. I stood in front of that radio, Brother IJ, and I was like in a trance. I felt like 40 minutes. The record was probably 7 minutes, like the version they played on the radio. And I stood there just listening to it like in a trance. And I remember as I'm listening to it, first of all, I was surprised that on WBLS, which was this polished R&B station, they're playing a record that's using like slang. So that kind of struck me. That's the first thing. Apart from that, this rhythmic talking to music, it was very New York. Like you didn't have to tell me that New York is where it began. I could hear it in the music. The third thought that I had was this is very black. Like in other words, only black people can come up with this kind of rhythmic talking to music and have it sound that good. Like no other group of people could do that. So I stood there until the song was over and I was completely blown away. And I remember in my 9-year-old mind when it was over, I don't remember if they went to another song or if they went to a commercial. But I remember thinking to myself, I don't know what that is, but that's it. Like I was completely blown away by it. After that, then of course we started to learn about Mr. Magic and Marley Marl, who did the Mr. Magic Rap Attack on WBLS. Not too long after that, you had DJs like Chuck Chill Out and Red Alert who would do rap music on Kiss FM. Because that was the thing back then. You didn't get rap every day, all day on the radio. So in order to hear rap music, the commercial stations would do mix shows for 2 or 3 hours on the weekend, Friday and Saturday. That was the only opportunity you had to hear rap music. Now, years later, non-commercial college stations, they kind of started getting into the act. And so it was around 1986, maybe, late 86, early 87, but about late 86. Out here in Long Island, we have Hofstra, which is a college, and they had a radio station, WRHU. And so Mr. Magic, Red Alert, Chuck Chill Out, all those people were done by 11 p.m. So I would stay up from 11 to midnight so I could listen to WRHU. It was a guy named Jeff Force. He had a show called P5. P5 stood for Post-Punk Progressive Pop Party. I don't know why they called the show that, but they were playing records that the other DJs on the other stations were not playing. So I would stay up and listen to that from 12 to 2. And then I discovered on another radio station, it was 105.9 WNWK. It was like a lease time programming type of radio station. And they had a show in there that began at 2 a.m. called DNA and Hank Love. It became DNA and Half Pint. But when I first started listening to it, late 80s, it was DNA and Hank Love. And then that was from 2 to 4. And then from 4 to 5 a.m. was the Awesome 2. Now, by 4 a.m., I was out. I was that kid that would be in the bed with the boombox, fall asleep with the headphones on, trying to take rap music. Like, that's how far I went out of my way to hear it. And that's how fascinating it was to me. There was other shows that I would listen to, like Vandy C. He had a show on WNYE, which broadcast out of Medgar Evers Community College. I would listen to his program, and all of these different shows are playing different records because the music was so progressive at the time that you had new records coming out. There were so many records that the DJs on the commercial station couldn't play everything. They had a certain amount of songs that they had in their rotation, but they couldn't play everything. When I'm in about the 9th grade, I started listening to a show called The Operating Room, which included Dr. Dre. You remember Dr. Dre from Yo MTV Raps? He hosted the show, and it was co-hosted by someone I became really good friends with many years later, a guy called Wildman Steve. He's a radio legend out here in Long Island, but that was on WBAU, and that was, I believe, a Delphi University's radio station. And so back then, in order for you to hear rap, you had to basically do what I did, kind of stay up late on the weekend and make your kind of pause, edit mixtapes so that you can listen to this stuff, during the week when you didn't get rap on the radio. And that's love of the art form. Because now it's easy. You could just go buy a radio, click play, and you're hearing rap music all day on the radio. Now, it's not good rap now, but back then it was no such thing. So in order for you to hear rap music, you really had to make an effort. You really had to work for it. And if you would make that kind of effort to sacrifice that kind of sleep for it, then that means you really love the art form. And so that was me. I was that person that really loved the art form. And then in my school, I became like the go-to person for hip hop. Like when people wanted
Wait a
to
minute,
take,
brother Rollo, you drop in so much, brother. I want to make sure that people get all this. So I want to just slow down just for a minute. Something that you said, I don't, what happens with these live shows, brother Rollo, is that a few people listen when it's live, and then a whole lot listen later on when it's recorded. So I want to say this for the benefit of those watching now and for those who will see the later recorded version. What the brother said, you may have missed the importance of it. It's very important. He said that he used to stay up late. I can relate. He's absolutely right. The shows that played hip hop was on late. It was on early in the morning. And
that's
yes,
right.
you have your little radio and you be pausing it when the commercial came on. You ain't want the
That's right.
commercial. You pause that joint.
That's
It
right.
come back on. You unpause it. And we had cassette tapes. Some of y'all don't
Cassettes.
know about cassette tapes.
That's
And those
true.
tapes would pop. We put the pencil in and bring it back and tape it up. I mean, there was a lot that went into this. If you were a real hip hop head, you put a lot of time into that. You knew when the shows were coming on. You knew who the DJs were. So the brothers right and exact with that. I'm really glad that he's bringing those memories because this is exactly what I want this series to be about. People who were there, who remember, right, what they invested and what that feeling was like. I don't think we all knew it was going to be where it is now, but we knew this joint is everything. I know that we was like, this is everything right now. So brother Rollo, thank you for that, man. Let me ask you, because hip hop started in New York, but it went a whole lot of places. So some people had local hip hop acts or musicians that they liked, and maybe they had more celebrated nationally known hip hop artists. Could you break down like who were the people where you were that were big, and who were the people nationally that that you were feeling when you were coming up?
Locally in my area, I used to rap as a teenager myself, so I was the local personality. And so,
You was an MC,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
my man.
Yes, sir. And so because of that, I would study the dictionary, so I would have words that were decidedly different to say. And so, for me, from my area, it was me and another friend of mine who was in a group. We were in a group together. So the local in the neighborhood, it was us, and then we had a couple of local DJs. In fact, I have to say this. There's a DJ that I came up with in my neighborhood. His name is DJ Tiger. He's got a internet radio website now called fullblastradio.com. I would encourage everybody to go check out DJ Tiger at fullblastradio.com. It was him and a few other DJs that were personalities in the neighborhood that would always do the parties. That's back when people would have parties at their house. So the local house party was being done by, a lot of local DJs around. Apart from that, here in Suffolk County, first of all, in the 80s, we didn't really get a lot of rap from out of state. So, for example, Miami bass and that sort of rap music coming from the South, we didn't hear that until, I don't know, maybe 86, 87, somewhere like that. West Coast rap, that wasn't really a thing. I remember hearing in the maybe late 80s rappers out of Boston, and that was considered kind of strange because for us, rap was a New York thing. So we didn't get a lot of rap from other places. But for us here in Suffolk County, we had Rakim, who was from Line Dance. He was a big deal. Of course, everybody knows him around the world now. He's considered the best by many people. He grew up not too far from where I live. Apart from that, we had groups like De La Soul, who's also from Suffolk County. They lived even closer to me. Apart from that, we had K Solo, who was from Central Islip.
Ah,
JVC
yeah.
Force, they had a huge record back in '88 called Strong Island. They were also from Suffolk County. And then you had other acts like Public Enemy. They were from Long Island, but they were Nassau County. You had Leaders of the New School, also Nassau County acts. You had Sons of Berserk. You know, it had a handful of people that came out of Long Island. And even Busta Rhymes was in Long Island at the time when he was a teenager. He came up out here and made a name for himself out here in Long Island. So those were some of the acts that I listened to. It wasn't until maybe late '80s when I started to really understand rap coming out of maybe like the West Coast. And it wasn't until some time after that until I started really appreciating certain artists like Exhibit, who I think is really good lyrically. Raz Cass, he's from out west. I think he's really good.
Mm.
You had acts like The Far Side, another California group. In recent memory, there's a brother named for Sean who was from out there in California. So I didn't really start paying attention to a lot of those kind of acts until late '80s, early '90s. For us, all rap was New York rap, in the beginning. So we talk about
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Magic, Red Lyric, Chuck Chill Out. We talk about those shows where you had to stay up late to record and make your pause edit mixtape. All of the artists we listened to was New York artists. When we heard Miami bass with like Two Live Crew in the late '80s, it was like a joke to us. It was like country people trying to rap. So we didn't really think much of it. It was their thing. It was from their region, and it was their thing. In New York, we didn't really think much of that. So early on, I didn't listen to a lot of rap from out of state until late '80s, like early '90s, when I really started to pay attention to rap from other places. But throughout the '80s, for us, it was all local artists. So early on, we had like Curtis Blow, we had Jimmy Spice and Super Rhymes, we had, Flash and the Furious, Treacherous 3, Fearless 4, Funky 4 plus one more, the Crash Crew, the Cold Crush, a lot of those early acts, Spoonie G, right? All of those are New York people. So this is what we listen to. Like rap was like our culture, it was like ours. So all of the artists we listened to were local artists, but I didn't really start listening to other acts out from outside of New York until, years later. And so you had people like Common, who was from the Midwest, or I don't know, Crucial Conflict. You had a lot of other groups that started coming out from different places. I didn't listen to Crucial Conflict, but Common was Midwest. So I started learning about early like acts like that from outside of New York, early '90s, when I really started paying attention to acts from outside of New York.
Nice, nice. And yeah, I think going building on what you said, I think that people that are not from New York who may have sensed a tad bit of arrogance or cockiness were probably right because, as the as the brother said, in the early days, there was all of the acts were from New York, right? And that's where
Absolutely.
the first hip hop stations are coming out of New York. So I think it was, yeah, we felt it was like your brother said, it was ours.
That's right. It
And then
belonged
of
to us.
course, right, so then it started going to different places. And I have to say, at first there probably was a little bit of bias against non-New York City rappers. But as the genre evolved and we heard brothers nice from Chi-Town, like a Common, or
Yeah.
people like
Or
what's his brother's name? Pierre? What's
Twister.
his name?
It was Twister
It
out
was
of
some
Chicago.
Scarface from Houston. It
Scarface.
was people that were nice, man, and they were in
Absolutely.
different parts of the country. So as it evolved, we started to develop appreciation. Like, yo, we may have started it off, but there's some brothers and sisters around the country that's nice too.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of nice how that worked out. Ultimately.
Yeah, we paid attention.
Now I
And
want to know. Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
before you get to your next question, I definitely want to add this. We're talking about 50 years and like the origin. Um, and I think it's important to make the distinction because people talk about hip hop and they talk about rap music, and sometimes they talk about it as if it's one and the same thing. So I just want to bring some clarity to that subject, if I could. If you know anything about the origin of hip hop music, the music, it was a performance art exclusively in the beginning. There was no records. So we talking early '70s. There was no record labels. Nobody was signing rappers. Nobody was putting out rap records until maybe the late '70s. But early on, it was a performance art exclusively. So that means you had to be at the party. You had to be in the park. You had to be where the MCs were rocking. Maybe sometime after that, people would start to get cassette tapes and the battles would begin to float around. So, 1981, you might have Cold Crush versus the Fantastic at Harlem World. right? Those tapes started to float around. But 81, it was already rap on record. But the point is, to see hip hop music exemplified, you had to be there live. Now, when you take that same concept into a recording studio and you record it and package it to put it on a shelf to be sold, that's when it becomes rap. So I say RAP stands for recorded and packaged. When you take this concept of hip hop and MCing and you record it and package to put on a shelf, that's when it becomes rap. But here's the thing though. The word rap was being used before the term hip hop. A lot of people don't realize this. Now you're into spoken word. You know about Gil Scott Heron. You know about the Last Poets. You familiar with the Watts Prophets, I would assume, right? Watts Prophets, I believe it was their second album, came out in 1971. It was called Rappin' Black in a White World. The short title is Rappin' Black. There's no hip hop yet. There's no, I mean, this DJ's doing stuff, but it's not hip hop yet. So the word rap was already being used before August 11th, 1973. You follow what I'm saying? And so for people like Watts Prophets and Gil Scott Heron and these people, I say RAP stands for revolutionary and positive, because that was the kind of rap that they did. Rakim years ago said rap is rhythm and poetry. RAP, rhythm and poetry. I think I would designate people like the Watts Prophets to be revolutionary and positive. Now there's good rap, and now of course there's bad rap. But I just want to make that distinction between hip hop and rap, because I think it's important to note that. And here's another thing. I don't want to go too far off the topic. I'm going to let you come to the next question. But are you familiar with Davey D out on the West Coast? He's a journalist. He's got a website called davyd.com. Yeah, so he said something that I thought was very interesting, and I think it's worth repeating. He said hip hop is a continuum, meaning hip hop didn't fall out the sky intact, and was not created in a vacuum. Hip hop is the culmination of things that existed before it that gave rise to it. And so I just wanted to make that distinction about hip hop. And so I'll let you go ahead with the next question. I just wanted to put that out there so people understand the history and the origin of some of these terms.
And, yes, sir. Appreciate that. And also, for those watching and listening, rap was a pejorative term that was used in the black community to connote that you had a gift of gab. Hence, H. Rap Brown, right? From the Black Power movement. Why rap? Because he could talk. He could get on that mic and talk. So just so you know, so yes, a lot of this, all of these cultural art forms, they are cultural, part of a cultural continuum, right? They build on each other. So for instance, you may remember, Brother Rollo, you may have been listening to some of that hip hop, and your mom's and pops like, "What you listen to, boy? What they talking about?"
That's right.
And it kind of made it seem like it was something bad. But if we had known more as kids, of course we would have been respectful enough not to challenge our parents. But we would have known that they had blues music, some of which was dirtier and talked about sex and drugs and all types of stuff. Right? That was the hip hop of that day, or jazz music in some respects. So it's funny how you can see some of these trends in different historical eras. It's the kind of the sacred music that's acceptable, and then it's the profane music. So there's always that sacred, profane musical dynamic, or it might have been funk at some points. People thought funk was kind of low culture, they saying stuff that's not, versus a disco, which has a whole nother connotation we're not gonna get into on this show. So what you said is very interesting, very important. I really hope those of you watching, please share this link, get more people to hear this very important history, especially from brother. I didn't even know you was a MC, brother. That's good. He's bringing in a perspective that's very much, he was there in tune and intact. You're going to get it from the ground level, from the grassroots level. Now, hip hop can be very funny, as we know. It can provide some very funny moments, interesting memories. Do you have any funny or interesting memories that come to mind that come around hip hop?
Oh yeah, I remember the first time I got an opportunity to interview the Crash Crew, and it was late 90. It's around 95, maybe. Yeah, it was around 95, 96, somewhere there about. And I remember listening to them. I'm a small kid. I'm sixth grade. I'm 12 years old listening to the Crash Crew, and in doing radio, I had worked myself up to the point where I was actually able to do an interview with the Crash Crew. So for me, when I was either on the way to do the interview, and when I completed it on the way back, I was still blown away that I had just talked to the Crash Crew. So it's just interesting stories like that. I have tons of those where I met certain artists. So for example, I remember one night I had met Kango Kid from UTFO, and rest in peace to him because he's gone. I like to speak his name because he was a very positive guy. He was a good dude. You won't really be able to find too many other people in rap that were as affable and easy to approach and easy to talk to as him. So I got an opportunity to meet him. So those are some of the interesting stories. The same night I met him, I actually met Charlie Brown from Leaders in the New School. Him and I became good friends, and him and I are still friends to this day. So those are some of the interesting stories, meeting some of those people. But one day I was listening to Scenario. It was a Tribe Called Quest and Leaders of the New School. And I'm listening to this on the phone. Now, the phone, sometimes if you listen to music and the phone rings, it'll cut off and then you can answer the phone, right? So I'm listening to Scenario, and it got right up to Charlie Brown's part. The phone cut off, it starts ringing. It's Charlie Brown calling me. And so I talked to him. I didn't tell him I was listening to the song. We talked for a while. And then after I hung up the phone, when you hang up, the song picks up from where it left off. It picks up from his verse, right where his verse begins in the song, right after I hung up the phone with him. So it's interesting things like that, I could remember meeting Little Rodney C and KK Rockwell, who were Double Trouble in the movie Wild Style. They were also part of the Funky 4 Plus One More, who was on Enjoy Records and Sugar Hill Records. And just people like that I remember as a kid coming up. If you told me as a kid I would be able to meet with these people and I sit down with them and hang out with them and all this kind of stuff, I would have told you were crazy. So even when I got to that point where I would interview these people, it's like the teenager in me was doing backflips. Like those are some of the interesting stories that I have. Just being able to work my way up to the point where I could interview some of these artists that I grew up listening to that I have so much respect for, and then befriend them and hang out with them and go places and be able to call them on the phone and that sort of thing. Those are some of the interesting stories that I have. It's too numerous to mention them all here today. I'm just giving you a little idea. Brother IG, I can't hear you.
My bad.
Okay.
Tell us this. I know you have some very interesting perspective on this. In your opinion, from where you sit, what impact, positive and or negative, has hip hop had on the Black community over the years?
Okay, so first impact I think it had was very positive because we talked about Rapper's Delight, which was 1979. In 1980, and I would challenge people to look this up, there was a record called How Are We Gonna Make the Black Nation Rise? They was talking about Marcus Garvey and Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. Very interesting record. This came out in 1980. So rap on record wasn't even out a full 12 months yet. And you already have positive rap on record. So sometime after that in 81, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five did a record called The Message. It was talking about life in the inner city. And so I think a lot of those records had a positive impact. And I think it's interesting that after The Message blew up in rap, doing conscious, the term conscious rap didn't exist yet back then. We call it message rap. But message rap was a way to make a quick hit in rap. So for example, Run DMC's first record was It's Like That and That's the Way It Is. Of course, they became the biggest thing in rap music, but even they used message rap as a way to make a quick hit in the beginning, and it jump-started their career. Years later, we had groups like Public Enemy, we had X-Clan, we had Poor Righteous Teachers, we had the Jungle Brothers. I can go to a level deeper with people like Lakim Shabazz, King Son, the whole Black Watch movement, Unique and Dashan. I can go into a whole lot of names. So a lot of that music had a lot of positive impact, on us as a community of people. And then years later, you had the Fugees, who sold probably more rap records than any other artist up to that point in rap music. And so a lot of those records, I think, had a positive impact. Public Enemy, at the height of their form, when they would put out a new album, it would sell 1 million copies in a week. So people wanted to hear socially relevant content. People wanted to hear rap that had, agreeable messages in it. We talked about A Tribe Called Quest. Every album they ever did sold at least 1 million copies. Fugees at last count sold maybe like 40 million, and they probably passed that on their second Score album. And so positive rap is something that people actually want. Now, what happens is commercial radio, white-owned black music stations that are not owned by people that look like us, dictate to us now what we listen to. And so, in that context, a lot of the rap has become very negative. So it was Mos Def that said hip hop went from selling crack to smoking it. Years ago, people would, rap about selling drugs, which was not good. That was very detrimental to the community. But now they're rapping about abusing drugs as if that's a good thing. So I think things like that have a very negative impact. Of course, you have the misogyny in rap music. You have the violence in rap music that's glorified, and you also have materialism that's being glorified in music. And I think Brother Quaba now out of Indiana, who was part of the Clear the Airways project, he does an excellent job at laying out, what's wrong with a lot of the music lyrically and some of the content that might be violent, materialistic, or negative. And I think music has a way of bypassing the rational part of your brain and appealing to the emotional part of your brain. And so when the messages are negative, in turn, people's behavior becomes negative as a result. So those are some of the positive and negative impacts I think hip hop has. Rap music, because that's what we get on the radio now. But the messaging, I think we have to be more intentional with the messaging and how, the artists, I think, need to assume a little bit more responsibility with respect to the content that they're putting out and what they're saying, and trying to make that content a little bit more constructive than what it is now. So underground rap, which I still listen to, I don't stay up late like I used to, but there's a lot of good rap that still comes out that doesn't really see the light of day. A lot of people think all rap music is what they hear on commercial radio, and that's probably not even 5% of all the rap that's out here now. So there's a lot of artists that still make what we call, Brother IJ, boom bap, music that we can relate to. It's not that kind of down south, really slow production, very underproduced, all rap records, and I like that. So those are some of the impacts I think rap has had, positive and negative. And people from our generation, I think the positive impact that it had, the ripple effect is still being seen today. So, for example, I'm writing books and doing what I'm doing now because Public Enemy for me was the spark that lit that fuse, and then it became, trendy, So X-Clan was out. Like I said, Poor Righteous Teachers, you had people, brand Nubian people that will be coming with that message. And for us, that music made consciousness, black consciousness, a trend. It was a thing you wanted to do. And I know coming up, the Nation of Gods and Earths was big in New York City, and rap music helped to spread that message. And there was a period of time where if you weren't Nation of Gods and Earths or had knowledge of self in some way, some facet or another, you weren't cool. Like, you weren't down if you didn't have some knowledge of something, in hip hop. And that's part of what they call the fifth element, which is knowledge. That's something we overlook. But late 80s, early 90s, like, that was the thing. You were not cool if you were not conscious. And that's coming from the impact that hip hop and rap music had on us. Now, I think this is interesting. We talk about old school artists. If you watch Wild Style, and I'm sure you've seen it before, I would encourage you to go back and watch it again. There's a scene where Cold Crush brothers battle the Fantastic Romantic. And Fantastic Romantic did their routine, right? Because that's what we call it. At the end of their routine, they did a call and response kind of thing where they would have the audience, they would say, I'm proud. And the audience would say, I'm proud. And they would say, to be black. And the audience would scream back, to be black. I'm proud to be black. So even in the kind of party scene early on, this is 1981, there's still this message of black pride and this sense of racial identity and this pride in who we are as black people. We were getting that in the music early on.
That's right. Yeah, and that's, if you think about it, depending on what historian you talk to, the Black Power movement ends in about 75, some say 81, 82. Its last breaths are in that 81, 82. So if you're old enough, you think back to 81, 82, think about the posters you saw hanging up in the street, in the neighborhood, some of the music, some of the hairstyles, some of the clothing. You still saw vestiges of cultural nationalism. You still saw people with some kente, right? Certain expressions, right on, peace, brother. Uhuru, Harambe. So there was still vestiges of the Black Power. Yeah, it was still there, but it was no longer what it was. So that's a very good point. Now, if you think back on your life, Brother Barlow, think back. How would you say, if it has at all, hip hop has helped you personally?
Okay. So like I said, when I was 15 years old, Public Enemy put out their first album, Bum Rush the Show, I didn't understand Public Enemy as a conscious rap group. To me, I was just thinking I'm supporting some local Long Island rappers that signed to Def Jam Records, right? I didn't know that there was socially relevance to the album. So I bought the album and I still have it on vinyl. I listened to it and I'm just enjoying the music. Like, I'm not totally getting it. I'm enjoying the music though, and I'm, in my mind, I'm supporting a local act. It wasn't until one night I mentioned Jeff Force on WRHU, P5, the post-punk progressive pop party. He had Chuck D on as a guest one night. This is when the first album was out. And Chuck D explained the social relevant message of every song on the album. They went from top to bottom. And he talked about the meaning of every song. That for me was the beginning of understanding the message of Public Enemy. And that was the beginning of this Black consciousness that helped to shape me. So I would definitely say Chuck D, Professor Griffin, those guys, and what they were doing is it definitely helped me personally. And like I said earlier, getting all this information and accumulating all of this knowledge culminated into me writing my book and doing some of the things that I'm doing now. And by the way, I sent it to you. I don't know if you listened to it, but there is a soundtrack associated with the book. I would have to probably send it to you again. But the early influence of hip hop music is what made me want to do a rap soundtrack to the. It's not me, by the way. It's another artist, Sam Sun, produced by Finster, and scratches by DJ Tiger. Shout out to all of them guys. They did the
Gotta
soundtrack
get
for the
them
fact.
on, brother Rollo. We gotta get them on. Try to
Absolutely,
get them on as
absolutely.
part of this series, man. And hear some of the music.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, yeah. When we do
definitely.
that next time, let me know. I will
Yeah,
get everybody on the same page on a Sunday. We could do that, definitely, definitely. So
definitely.
yeah,
We would love to have that.
yeah. So that's
So
the
people
impact that it
actually
had on
hear
my
the
life.
music.
Yeah, yeah. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you. But that's the impact that it had on my life, because at that point, rap was very positive, and it was very positive from the beginning. Like I said, 1980, you get your first conscious rap record. Didn't really blow up, but it was very positive from the beginning. So that positive impact and that sense of racial pride and that sense of identity, that African identity and that pride and that dignity and that African identity, that's some of the things that I got from the music early on. And it's impacted me to this day. Like I said before, the ripple effect of that music that I heard as a teenager, it still affects me today as an adult. And so it definitely had a profound, agreeable impact on me. Definitely.
Yeah, I would concur with that. For me, brother Rollo, and for those listening, at the time I was spoon fed a lot of Africana studies by my father and Black Power sort of content, and then I found this book, a copy of Malcolm X Speaks, in my bedroom that belonged to my father, and I was just sold. So that's about 12 or 13. This coincidentally is the same time that we pausing and taping hip
Yeah.
hop. So it was kind of like the black nationalist Africana studies influence hits the hip hop.
Mm,
Powerful. And I know for
mm,
me, it kept me out of gangs, it kept me out of violence, it kept me out of jail, it kept me out of using and selling drugs. It kept me on somewhat of a kind of a straight and narrow, to the degree that I was able to navigate a very, very, very dangerous neighborhood, very violent neighborhood, um, and be able to do a few things, with my life and be a resource to others. And I'm not the only one who has that story, by the way. Many brothers and sisters I speak to tell me that hip hop and that Black Power movement, or the remains of it, because most of us were, if not little kids, we weren't even born yet, right? But those two influences gave us something to reach for, and it told us these things are not cool. The drug selling and the beating up on your lady and doing that's not, and leaving your family, and that's not cool. This is how we get down. Very important parameters it set for us, um, in a way that was musical and cultural, uh, um, that really resonated with a lot of young people. And so for those of you who think that nation building is just about scholarship and libraries and museums, understand that we need drama, creative production, cultural production is just as important. It conveys those messages, which is why the Black Power movement had a sister movement called the Black Arts movement, right? Where those Black Power political people were now getting into poetry, writing beautiful plays, because they saw that this is what moves people. I can get up there and talk to you for 3 hours, and or I could play X Clan and Brand Nubian and Poor Righteous Teachers, and I guarantee you're gonna enjoy them a lot more than you're gonna enjoy me talking for 3 hours. So it's kind of that. So that's very important. How hip hop affected people personally. Now, this is
No,
kind
hold
of
on. Before you move on, let me add on to what
yes,
you're saying, if I could.
please.
We talked about making the pause edit mixtapes. When those shows began, it was 8 p.m. You were not in the street. You were at home because you wanted to hear this rap music, right? So when the sun is going down and starting to get dark in the summertime, where people are outside getting in trouble, I'm in the house listening to rap because I want to tape the latest, you know. So that it kept me out of trouble in that way. And then Saturday night, like I said, I'm up until 4 a.m. recording rap music. Other people out hanging out, getting arrested, getting in trouble, getting in fights and whatever. It kept me out of the street just wanting to hear it. You follow what I'm saying? So that's another impact that it had on me, just keeping me out the street.
Powerful. That's
Yeah, yeah,
powerful stuff. I think, Brother Rollo, I don't know if you agree with this. I really think as I talk and move in the community, trying to do certain things on a community level, people are underappreciating the power of art and culture, man.
yeah,
And not really
yeah.
understanding like it has to be the political, has to marry the cultural. Can't be
Right.
one of them, but the culture is so powerful. You know,
Yeah,
so powerful.
and a culture is a reflection of who you are. And so Malana Karenga always says you have to be yourself to free yourself. So if we spend time trying to imitate Europeans and not practice our own culture, we will never be free because we're not functioning as our authentic selves unless we're functioning in our culture, a culture that we created. So I think that's very important what you're saying.
Right. All right. Now this is kind of a controversial question, but it's a logical one. You know, people like ourselves, revolutionary nationalists, cultural nationalists, religious nationalists, whatever, we're gonna bang on the hip hop or the music we hear that we feel is promoting a hatred of our sisters, blaming sisters, scapegoating them for everything wrong, or that's pushing drug use and drug selling, or that's pushing fratricide. So now the natural question is, okay, so what do we want? Do we want radios? Do we want to pressure radio stations to censor that type of music with those messages? Do we want to educate families to say, don't let your kids listen to it? How do we address that as you see it? Because I know you have daughters, you have young daughters. I know that you hear some stuff you don't want them to hear. So I'm curious, how do you go about that?
Well, I think I'm not for censorship because I think anytime you see censorship going on, censorship is an attempt to spread ignorance. I don't think that certain music that talks about certain topics or certain content should be available for minors to listen to. So, for example, you should not be able to put on Hot 97 and Power 105 and listen to some of the messages in that music, and you're 10, 11 years old, you're 12 years old, you're not supposed to hear that. So should it exist? Maybe. I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm not a fan of censorship. But at the same time, there's decency standards. So there's certain things you cannot say or do on commercial television. You know, like you can't, NBC Nightly News, they can't use profanity. Why? Because there's a decency standard. Where is that same decency standard when it comes to rap on commercial radio? I think it's interesting that in the state of Florida, they're trying to ban books that talk about our history and give us some knowledge of ourselves, but they're not talking about banning a lot of this disagreeable rap music. I'm not for banning because that's censorship, but at the same time, it shouldn't be available everywhere in any place every day, all day. So I think there's a certain level of decency, there's a certain standard of decorum that we have to live up to as a society, and that circles back to what I said earlier. The white-owned black music stations are playing a lot of this bad music for our consumption. They would never play this type of music on Z100 or whatever white children listen to. If you listen to the lyrics on the shows or the songs on those stations, you're not getting the kind of negative content that's being pushed and promoted for black kids and young black people to consume. So should it exist? Maybe. But should it be on commercial radio, even though they mute certain words out? No, because the children still know what that's saying, even though they might be muting certain words. And it was a period of time on Hot 97 where they were using the N-word on the radio. That should never exist. So I'm not for banning it, but I think there should be standards of decency where you can't put it on, middle of the daytime and hear it. A child on their way to school should not be able to hear a lot of what's on commercial radio, but this is what they're listening to anyway. So I'm not for it, but at the same time, I think there's a place for it. So there's certain movies that you wouldn't show on television unless you edited certain things out. So you wouldn't play an R-rated movie with the violence and with the cursing on television, commercial television, without doing some editing to it, right? And so I think that same, that same code, that same standard has to be applied to what we listen to. I don't think it should be available everywhere. And look, if it's available on the underground, you have to work to get it, like how we did in the past. That's fine. As long as it's not on commercial radio, as long as it's not on the television, and they're not brandishing guns and videos and all this kind of foolishness on daytime television where children can listen to it. Is there a place for that? Should it exist? Maybe. I don't agree with it, but at the same time, it shouldn't be so easily available to our community to hear this and consume this constructive music. I call it hate hop, that killer rap music that they play on the radio now, drill rap or whatever they're calling it now.
Man, I definitely agree with your take on it. I think I really appreciate movements like Clear the Airways movement with Brother Kwabena and Brother Bernard Creamer, who wrote the book Who Sold a Soul, looking at hip hop, being critical of its messaging. Because I think they get it. They're trying to get it's a whole community effort. It takes me back to 81, 82, where we had these things. Those of you who are 30 years old don't know about this. They had these things called game rooms. And you didn't have a personal PlayStation in your house. It was a big, huge game. You went to game rooms. You played for a quarter. And in those game rooms, they usually had pizza and all this types of stuff. And what happened was kids were cutting school and trying to spend all day in the game rooms. And so parent groups, I know in Harlem, parent groups were banging on these pizza store owners and game room store owners to say, listen, you are facilitating our kids cutting school. We know it's not your fault, but by you staying open, letting them come in, you're facilitating it. And they actually got many of the game rooms in the neighborhood to have signs and say, you a school kid, you can't come in here until after 3:00. So things like that, that grassroots movement can get businesses to help, can get bang on the radio stations, bang on some of the artists. I think that's a really good movement. Check out that Clear the Airways movement, family. Google that, look it up. Very important movement if you want to get involved with helping to kind of steer the direction of hip hop in a better place, right? And challenge some of the very ugly. I mean, there's some hip hop that's rape. I mean, straight up rape. I was like, what? I heard some stuff. I couldn't believe that someone would think to put that on the record, and I couldn't believe that someone would think to play it. So, what messages are young ladies getting about their bodies and about how they're supposed to be respected in this very important activity we call sex, and what messages young men getting? And so I those are things that disturb me as a parent and a teacher, that we have to get involved with that. But moving on to some a little bit lighter conversation. Now this may be challenging for you, brother, but I want you to think of your favorite hip hop lyric and spit it for us, brother. The lyric that stands out to you.
I don't know if I have a
Too
favorite.
many, right?
I mean, there's so many. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say it, and I can't quote the whole thing, but Melly Mel, the song called Beat Street on the soundtrack to Beat Street. Bro, I get goosebumps to this day when I listen to that. That thing is that profound. Anything from Rakim, he said, I guess nobody told you a little knowledge is dangerous. It can't be mixed, diluted. It can't be changed or switched. It's a lot of different, X-Clan said a lot of very profound things. Public Enemy, they said, move as a team, never move alone. These are the kind of messages that we need now. So, in terms of rap lyrics, there's so many. And I mean, every day something comes to my mind that I listened to as a teenager without me even trying to think about it. So a lot of those lyrics are there. It's too many to mention. But I mean, if you know about Common, you know about Black Thought, you know about Chuck D, you know about Rakim, if you know about, oh man, there's so many names, bro. You know what I mean? It's so many names. I can go underground. Like there was a guy named Lord Shafiq who was on Select Records at one time with DJ Doc, who engineered KRS-One's first two albums. Man, that guy was one of the illest I ever heard, and he only did one album and he disappeared after that. There's so many that I could think of. There's so many that I could name. If I really put a focus on that, that's a whole hour in and of itself. Just talking about deciphering lyrics and quoting lyrics, it would be too lengthy for me to go into. So now, what
That'd be
was
a
some of
nice
yours?
book.
Yeah,
That'd be a
absolutely,
nice book, though, brother. That's a hit for you.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, what was some
What
of
are some of
yours?
mine? I like Rakim. I might be misquoting him, but he said, "Take 7 MCs, put them in the line. It'll take 7 more before I go for mine." Uh, uh I forget. It
I
takes
take
7 more
seven
if I go
MCs,
for
put them in the
mine.
line. It'll take seven more before I go for mine. Wait, take seven MCs. Why am I blanking on this? Take seven
Me
MCs, put
too.
them in the
I'm blanking
line.
on that middle, the
I
middle
got it now.
verse.
Add seven more brothers who think they could rhyme. It'll
You
take
can
seven more
rhyme.
before I go for mine. Now that's 21 MCs
That's
ate up at the
21
same time.
MCs ate up at the same time. I thought that was
Yeah,
hot. That just it
yeah.
sounds simple, but if you think about what he's saying, that is powerful. Um, I
He said,
liked I liked
I'm the intelligent wise on the mic. I will rise right in front of your eyes because I am a surprise. So I'm going to let my knowledge be born to a perfection. All praises due to Allah, and that's a blessing. He's talking about the founder of the 5% Nation. So, with Rakim, there's so many, different lyrics that you could quote. With him, you could do a whole book on him, just him alone. And the 4 albums that he did as part of Eric B. and Rakim. And then he did more solo albums after. And a lot of those are noteworthy also in terms of being able to quote a
classic.
lot of what he said.
My
I
name is
think
Rocky Millar. The R is stands for raw. Turn it around. Still
it comes
comes
out.
out R. Like what?
Yeah, yeah, he was another level, man.
Crazy.
They said
Yeah.
when DMC from Run DMC heard Rakim for the first time, he got angry because he knew that was the beginning of the end of his era. This is
Right.
the impact that Rakim had. I think I mentioned Melly Mel. I think Grandmaster Caz is the name we don't mention as often as we should. People like Slick Rick, who was the storyteller. Jimmy Spice, I mentioned him earlier, another storyteller. A lot of these guys have a
That
lot of
super
very
rhymes.
interesting lyrics. Super rhymes, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
super rhymes.
I
A lot of them
remember
have
that.
a lot of very interesting lyrics that you can quote. And when you talk about your favorite and some of your favorite lyrics, those are some of the guys that you want to listen to and quote. Exceptional stuff, man. And it's and a lot of it has a lot of poetic value,
Yeah. I mean, this is taking me back to it's like a smell. We're very sensory people. I don't know about y'all, but I can go to a place and I can have a smell, and it takes me right back to 1984.
Mm.
And I know exactly what I was doing. It's like, yo, that's that smell. It's a pretzel, or when they used to make the pretzels on the street. It's a certain smell, and it's like songs are like that, right? And I remember as you were talking, I'm going back to being in PS 153, playing basketball in the schoolyard. People at the boom boxes playing the music, all the stuff that was going on. It takes you right back. It's like a historical mapping system. It plugs you into a certain place in your life, like a soundtrack. X Clan, I think, was in the 80s, gave me great. This is now, I think, would be when I'm in college, I'm an undergrad, and we're protesting and tearing up this university. And X Clan and Public Enemy had great meaning for us. We would actually do our protests and have radios playing their music as we're
Mm.
coming up to the university, to the administration building. Had great meaning, you know. And X Clan, man, he has something about uh African, very African. Come and step in brother's temple, see what's happening. Taste the bass flow coming from a zero. Tell me what a sissy know. Very bodacious, very assertive and confident. And I know I got a lot of me and very African centered with the dressing.
Yeah,
They inspired me to get locks and wearing African clothes every day on campus. It's
nice.
just a different, yeah, it was a
It was a different time.
different time, definitely. A
Yeah,
time
different time.
that we might want to bring elements of it back. That would be a great thing. Okay, so what about this, brother? What was your favorite album?
Oh, my favorite album. I got a tie for first place. Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation. That was the second album. One of the best albums I ever heard. Apart from that, De La Soul first album, 3 Feet High and Rising, because those two albums changed the face of rap music. In other words, it changed the way the music was produced. Both of those albums revolutionized rap for two different reasons. And it's interesting. Those are like Long Island acts for us, like local Long Island acts, but they changed rap music. So Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation, and De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising. If I had to pick a favorite for me, that's a tie for first place. But I'm leaning on that Public Enemy heavily. That's my favorite. I mean, there's not a lot of others that I can mention that are some of my favorites. But if I had to choose a favorite, it would be those two. Now, what about yours?
Yeah.
What was your favorite?
Oh, I don't even know if I could do it, brother. Definitely Daylight, the album you mentioned, 3 Feet, what was that 3 Feet High and Rising? Paid in Full. Um, I loved Big Daddy Kane. I don't remember his first album, but I loved his album, his first album, Big
Long
Daddy
Live the
Kane.
Kane was that first album.
His wordplay was sick,
Yeah,
ridiculous.
he was another level.
And he was God body, so at
Right.
least in the early years, he was coming with some knowledge of self, dropping it, and
Yes,
just
he was.
making it so pretty to listen, so lyrically pretty to listen to. But he was dropping some real stuff. He got a joint called grab a hold of yourself, open your eyes, get
Oh, Young
wise to the
Gifted in
truth
Black.
resides.
Young Gifted in
Yes,
Black.
killed it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Great stuff.
And X Clan's first album,
X
loved it.
Clan first album.
So yeah,
There's a lot of other ones that I could mention too, like UMC's Fruits of Nature. Now people don't talk about that, but I still think that's an incredible album, man. Diamond D, Stunts, Blunts, and Hip Hop. When I think of my favorite albums, that's high on that list too. There's so many. There's so many. I like Eric B. and Rakim, Follow the Leader. That was one of my favorites.
yes.
There's a
Now
lot.
we
There's
might
a
get
lot.
Diamond on the show. Diamond, I went to high school with Diamond D.
Really?
Yeah, in the Bronx, and we used to do mixtapes all the time. But he agreed to get on the show, but he's busy. He's got a house in Atlanta. He's moving around, producing, whatever. But we're gonna try to lock him in, and I'm trying to get Fat Man Scoop. He went to high school with us too, so I'm gonna
Oh
try to
wow.
get Fat Man Scoop on too. Yeah.
Yeah, keep
Yup.
me posted. I would
Okay.
love to watch that.
Yes, sir. You know it. We're gonna have you back anyway, brother, so you can bring the crew that you talked about that helped you do the
Absolutely.
soundtrack.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, what about this? Give us your top 7 MCs, or if you want to do top 10, it's up to you. But the people that you say, if you needed an all-star hip hop team, these would be the people on it.
Okay, so I would have to go back to Melly Mel as like one of my all-time favorites. I would also, in that same breath, have to mention Grandmaster Caz. I can't talk about favorites, of course, without mentioning Rakim. We mentioned him. People like Slick Rick, who was just an exception of what he did at just the storytelling. Apart from that, in more recent memory, the Jizza from Wu-Tang Clan, to me, that's one of the illest lyricists I ever heard in my life. And I've been listening to this since I was 9. That dude is one of the illest I ever heard ever. Apart from that, I like AZ out of Brooklyn. I think that's a very underrated artist, lyrically. I think AZ is incredible. I always like Cannabis because he was very, lyrically intense. Then you have people like Exhibit, who I mentioned earlier, another guy that I think is really good, lyrically intense. You have Razcast, he's out there on the West Coast also. There's another artist out of Brooklyn years ago named Wordsworth. He's still around. I don't know if he's doing music as heavily as he was, but he was really good. He had a partner named Punchline. Punchline and Wordsworth were really good. Out of Boston, I learned of a guy named Acrobatic. When I was doing radio, I did an interview with him, and actually the show that I was on gave him his first radio interview, his first airplay anywhere, and he ended up doing a lot of records being distributed by Fat Beats. He's really good. Apart from that, I think Common is someone that we don't talk about enough when we talk about the best. Black Thought is another name. Black Thought is a part of the Roots, but when we talk about best lyricists, we never mention Black Thought. I think he's incredible.
He's nasty.
There's a
Yeah, no
lot.
doubt.
Go ahead. Say it again.
He's nasty. There's no doubt about it. He's nice with it.
Yeah,
Black
yeah. I
Thought.
mean, I can't.
Yeah.
I know how many names I just went through. I'm sure I did more than 10, but when I think of the
It's
best,
all good, brother. It's all good.
those are some
Listen,
of the
man,
names that
we
come to
get
mind.
ready to close. I want you to show us your book again. I'm gonna put your email because your people interested. You want them to hit you up on the email, right?
Yes, yes. The email is offthecornerinfo@gmail.com. That email again is offthecornerinfo@gmail.com. And the book is FACT. FACT is an acronym that stands for Fundamental African Centered Thought. And the subtitle is Lessons and Solutions for African People. And I'm gonna send you
Excellent
that.
book. Excellent.
Thank you, and I'm gonna send you that
Really is,
soundtrack
yeah.
too, so you can listen to that music.
Definitely. We got to get a date to get y'all on with the music to play it, so we can
Yo, give
get
me a
people,
date. I got you.
let people
I'll
hear
get
it.
everybody together. We'll definitely do that. Let me
Sounds
know.
good, man.
Let me
All
know.
right. Want to give a shout out, salute to brother Rollo. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for writing your book. Thank you for taking time, loving on our community in the various ways you do. Give my shout out to your queen, to your lovely little queens who I had the pleasure of doing some I guess like homeschool lessons with them. They were very attentive, very sharp, had excellent questions. So you're doing a good job with family too, which is the number one nation. It's the micro nation, the
That's
foundation
right.
nation. Want to shout you out for that. And family, want to thank you all for listening. Please share this link. Please like, make your comments. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We've broken the 1,000 subscriber mark, but you know the white man last 2 years ago sabotaged our YouTube channel, Black Liberation University, that was getting ready to have 10,000 subscribers, and they took
Oh,
that
wow.
channel down. So we're building back, family, and we're going back to 10,000 subscribers. We want you to help us, right? To show
Yes.
that no enemy, no weapon formed against us can prosper, like the gospel, the church heads say. Same thing here. Thank you so much. I want to make sure we don't have miss any comments. That's my queen bee is saying thank you all for joining us. She's been giving you shouts the whole show, brother
Thank you.
Rollo, the whole
Thank you.
show. You know, she appreciates your commentary, and we appreciate your really in-depth, crisp knowledge of the genre. Very crisp. We know that this is a brother who knows what he's talking about. He's clearly not making that up. So we appreciate that, brother. And man, peace and blessings to you and family. As we salute the family, peace and Black Power family. Don't forget, October 23rd, we're bringing a Baba, a Jegna. We're bringing a heavy hitter. We're bringing Brother Felipe Luciano, one of the original last poets, the chairman of the Young Lords Party in New York City. All right, TV, radio personality, stone cold revolutionary, and he was an advocate for Black and Brown unity. We're bringing him to Sisters Uptown Bookstore on 156 in Amsterdam Avenue, New York, New York. We hope you will come at 3 p.m. We're going to have a lot more publicity about it, but come out, support the elder because he has some jewels that we need to hear. Black and brown people need to stop the BS. We are being oppressed, and whether we want to admit it or not, we are first cousins, historically speaking. There's no way around it. And we have to come together and stop the onslaught against them, how it's manifesting against them, and how it manifests against us. We create a broad-based coalition. We can do a lot of good work in the community. So please come out, check that out. Brother Rollo, peace. Thank you, man, for coming
Thank
through.
you, brother. Thank
We'll
you.
have you back again.
And thank you for giving me a voice
Peace,
and allowing me
family.
to speak on your outlet. Peace.
You got it.